Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access Channel. And we'll start out and ask if there's any public comment from the board this evening.
I'd just like to announce that the pancake breakfast is tomorrow morning at 8:30. All you can eat for $2.
Okay. Any other
Senior
public
Center.
comment? Any other public comment from the board? Public comment from the public?
Yeah,
Yeah, if you want, you can come here too. Either one. If you want to pull a chair,
I'd
then.
rather see the expressions.
Okay.
Well, some of us on the board aren't much to look at, so.
Okay, I'm Rod Dion from White Street. Okay, that's why I did it first.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'm here to talk about the primary school. I've been doing a lot of research lately, and I've got a report from Vertex, that town manager graciously printed up for me, so I can do my research on it. And my analysis of this particular thing, because I know construction and interior, I know everything there is to know about this kind of stuff. And with the pictures that they've supplied me with, or the company, this firm did, it shows to me that all the building really needs is an interior upgrade to get it back to code, to get it to the current codes, because it's so far old that it's, built 1926, But the thing is, it's been neglected 15 years. And to see the pictures of the condition of the interior to me, is disgusting. How it's never been maintained in those 15 years. And that's the way it was left. In the condition that's in. That's disgusting. That should never have happened. Should never have happened. Okay? According to the report, the building is totally sound. There's nothing wrong with the building, exterior-wise, construction inside. Nothing wrong with the building. It's just the interior items that are disgusting. Let me say that again. It's disgusting. So it needs to be taken out and redone inside. If it was to continue as a school, it doesn't have to though. It could be used for something else. But the thing is, the town would have to bring it up to code first in order to sell it. Because like Dave and I were talking about, it could be sold eventually as a housing, where you could put apartments in there. Because the exterior of the brickwork is fantastic. Of course, it's got some deterioration because it's been neglected. And let's see my notes here. Oh yeah, on the roof. I understand that $10,000 has been awarded to put a new roof on it. Now I don't know if that's going to go into code as far as putting a roof on top of a roof, or do they have to take off the old shingles first? I don't know how the code is in Lunenburg here. I know it is elsewhere, but not here.
Can I just clarify? It's an estimate. It's not been awarded.
Oh,
No,
it's
an estimate.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, but to me, that's one thing you've got to consider. Does that mean stripping the old roof and then putting a new one on, or just adding this onto it? That would make a difference in the price.
Which one's better? Does it matter?
Yes.
Oh,
Taking
okay.
off the old and putting on the new.
Is better?
Although I did roofing when I got out of the service, but my brother, he owns a company, a roofing company. I went to work with him first, and I learned roofing. And if the shingles are not curling badly, you can put another roof right on top of it. And it's good. That gives it better insulation, a double layer. Because unless I looked at that roof doesn't really look bad at all. Yeah, you can tell it's old. It's been here for a while, but it's still got some life left to it. It's a good insulator right now to put another one on top. So that might do something with the price to do with that, right? So that would be one thing you should find out what they're going to do. So they gotta strip it first or just lay it on top? That'll make a difference in the price.
Who would have to determine whether you can put a new one on?
The building, but you just got a new building guy again, and there's no one to ask, really, to find out what the code is.
It's not a new roof that's being estimated too, it's just repairs to the roof.
Just repair, you need a whole new, you just can't do
Right,
sections.
well,
This whole
I'm
one
just telling you
needs to
what's-
be done for sure.
For clarity, I'm just saying what was proposed. Because that $10,889 is a series of several repairs and things that need attention, but it's not a replacement of the roof.
Oh, it's not.
No, a replacement of the roof of that size would
My
probably
opinion,
be,
the 10,000
probably be
would be
$50,000 to
for the roof.
$75,000.
You know,
Yeah, mine was 70,000 by
Right.
itself, so that school's gonna be a lot more.
Right,
with how much?
70,000.
Oh.
Wow.
right.
And
Well,
in the vertex
cheaters.
report, it's 100.
Oh.
I said it would be 70 to 100, depending on what they use and how
Let's
they do
see,
it.
what else do I got
This
here?
one probably won't be cedar.
Gotta put my card in. I just got a couple of notes, that's all.
No problem?
Oh, yeah. Okay. In my opinion, Dave's not gonna agree with this, but I request that you don't demolish it, because the building is sound, it's structurally sound. In the floor, a couple of areas of the floors need work, no big thing. Probably needs a new boiler, because it's probably so old, it's probably as old as the building is. You know, they're good for 20 years. Yeah, now one beam down in the basement would be, the bottom portion of that beam, it seems to be rotting for some reason, it's probably got moist, and it rotted away. But that could be, the floor could be lifted, a new piece put in there, you're good for another 100 years, you know? Okay, what else we got here? Oh yeah, 10,000, and please do not demolish. Okay, now, I have a suggestion, you folks could consider it. With the 100 homes that's gonna be built, that's planned for Howard Street, the 100 homes, 25 per year, there's gonna be 1, 2, 3 bedrooms. There's gonna be children. No doubt. It's gonna be going in there, you know, the people are gonna have children, or they already have them. You might wanna consider keeping this building, mainly for that reason. Because right now, it's not costing you anything, like I said, except for the roof. That's about it, if that goes through. And I know you're gonna have discussions about passing building. Well, to me, that should be your primary concern at this point, but that's me. Okay? That should be your primary concern, pasture building, not that one at the moment. So I'm just asking you to please, don't consider demolishing that building yet until I complete my research on everything else I have to still do to get information. Okay? I still have a lot of information to get.
And how many months is that? Because in order for us to demolish it, it'd be months and months, so I think you're safe. It's not gonna be demolished anytime soon.
I wasn't aware that your assessor, the chief assessor here is a firm. She just told me that tonight. I've been talking downstairs for the last 2 or 3 weeks to try to get information about their quotes, how they diminished the price by $500,000 on the valuation of the building itself within 1 year. 500,000, they depreciated $500,000 in 1 year. I said, how did they come to this number? It's ridiculous.
What year did that happen? The depreciation?
That happened, I think it's dated 2018. 2018 is when this report was written, along with the,
That was when reassessments, the triennial assessments were done, so that's probably why.
so I'm still waiting to get an answer on that, but they say I might have to wait another week down the road to get the hold of this guy, whoever the guy is. Because the assistant down there couldn't dig up, I guess he's too new, and he doesn't know what happened 2, 3 years ago, so you know, that's fine. You apologize for that. I said, you don't have to. It's not your fault. You don't know where to look. Let's see, the other thing, oh yeah. Based on the 100 home quote going to be built, my suggestion would be, if you decide to keep the building, Okay? Request a few dollars through your capital plans for the next 4 to 5 years, a little bit each year, to bring it up to code. And that way, it won't be hurting that bad to get it to where it should be, even for a resale. Okay? Because like I said, if the need is there for a school, then you have it in 5 or 6 years. And that's when I feel the children are going to be growing up to that point to go to the school, the primary school. Because like I said, the planning only allows 25 per year to build each year, 25 each year. So, you just ask your capital planning for a few $1,000s each year, or 10 or 20,000. With that kind of a budget, I believe it's like $1 million. They got money to spare. But somebody has to request it. That's the key. Someone has to request it.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the input, and we'll be taking all of that in our discussion later on in the evening. I invite you to stay.
Well, it's on TV?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. No, I'll just go home and...
Okay.
I usually do.
Grab some popcorn.
I appreciate it.
Thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
listening to me.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I'll stay.
Other public comment?
I'll stay.
I'm sorry, are we discussing the old school building over here?
We're not discussing anything. This is public comment.
So, will that subject come up later tonight?
The old primary school?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the primary topics.
Will that be open for discussion?
I will allow public discussion then, yes. Okay, okay. Do you have public comment?
Sure, just a quick comment or two.
Okay.
At Dave Talkie, 72 Leominster Road. Since you brought us here, I'll go ahead and sit down.
There you
But
go.
I'm not going to be here as long, I promise. First and foremost, thank you guys very much for having all that Yankee-ass stuff removed from the back of the schoolyard. I really appreciate it. All that playground stuff is really horrible. So it looks much better than it used to. So I'm just here just to listen to the workshop, and thank you guys for continuing the dialogue. Despite what my esteemed gentleman over here, I really don't have an opinion on the best use of that property. I think there's multiple opportunities for the property, whether it get laid low and turned into a big burn pile, or whether it turns into a business incubator or artist studios or low-income housing like they've just done over in Leominster that they're working on right now. I think the only thing that really has been consistent in the short time I've lived here in the lovely town of Lunenburg is the town people after 3 votes really kind of want to retain that property as an asset of the community. I think everything else is really pretty much open. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for continuing the dialogue. I think I said the last town council meeting that we had, or Board of Selectmen, I forget where I'm at. It's not going to get better over time. So it's only going to get worse. So thank you again for continuing the dialogue, and let's look for a good use for that property, whether it's a soccer field or an incubator. There's a lot of good opportunities that I think will fit the needs of the community at large. So I look forward to it. So thank you
Excellent.
guys.
Thank you. Okay, announcements. Do you have any announcements?
No.
Town manager report.
All right. I do have announcements on existing vacancies. I'll take that
Okay,
back.
there you go.
It's an annual occurrence at our meetings, or regular occurrence. 1 regular member and 3 alternate vacancies on the Agricultural Commission, 1 vacancy on the American with Disabilities Act Commission, 1 vacancy on the Architectural Preservation District Commission, 1 vacancy on the Finance Committee, 1 vacancy on the Housing Authority, 1 vacancy on the Planning Board, which I'll bring up right now. We do have 1 applicant that submitted a talent bank form, so we're looking at scheduling a meeting shortly,
Well,
probably.
that person, that application should be sent to the planning board,
It has.
okay, and they should meet with the person first.
I think that was going to be the process followed.
Yep, okay.
And 1 regular member and 2 associate vacancies on the Zoning Board of Appeals. And interested applicants can find the talent bank form on the town website, and they can forward a completed form to the Board of Selectmen's office. An update on the Summer Street Road reconstruction project. The contractor is currently forming and placing concrete sidewalks in the Leominster section of the project. It is anticipated the sidewalks will be completed by the end of September. The contractor is also raising all casings and water gates prior to the placement of the surface course. The placement of the surface course is currently scheduled for the week of October 7th. An update on mosquito control. At our last meeting, I provided an update about the community advisory from the Neshoba Associated Board of Health that they issued, and it has been publicized in various forums, and that the school was spraying the athletic fields at the middle high school on Monday, September 9th. After that meeting, I worked with the Board of Health, the DPW director, and the Parks Commission chair, and Marshall Park was included in the spraying that took place yesterday due to its proximity to wetlands. Human resource audit and harassment training for staff. I have coordinated an audit by a human resource consultant of our existing human resource practices, including policies, procedures, how personnel records are kept, and I'm awaiting that report. This audit will be a good starting point for the HR director, assistant town manager, on areas that need improvement, as well as areas we're doing well with. This consultant will also be conducting a harassment training for the department heads on September 24th, and one for all staff on October 3rd. Open meeting law and conflict of interest in public records law training. The date that town council was available to provide elected and appointed officials an open meeting law, conflict of interest, and public records law training is Thursday, October 3rd. The location will be advertised once determined. I'm still working on a date for the same training for staff, but it will likely be the last week of October.
Do you have a rough time?
It would probably start around 7 p.m. for that elected appointed officials.
And will it be televised? You know, will they be filming it?
That hasn't been discussed, but I could coordinate with the cable access.
I think it's a good idea, because if people join midstream, you have it available. And
Sure.
people can watch it who aren't able to go.
Yeah, sometimes people are less willing to ask questions on a televised meeting, but we can work around, maybe questions can be submitted and just Adam can read them out loud and as a hypothetical question, so people get their questions answered.
I think it's a great recommendation to have an open meeting about open meeting.
Yeah.
Or recorded, I should say.
Well, it is
It was just a joke. It was just a joke.
Update on OSHA compliance requirements. Due to a law that was enacted in March of 2018 and took effect in February of 2019, certain staff members have taken the required OSHA training courses, and the DPW director and I met with a firm last week that is going to provide us with a scope of work to assess compliance and work on areas where corrections need to be made and provide safety trainings as well. Meetings and other announcements. The DPW director, the engineering firm, and I will be meeting on Thursday for a kickoff meeting for the Pleasant Street Bridge project that we receive funding through Mass DOT Small Bridge Program. And I'll be attending the Stormwater Task Force meeting as much as I can on Thursday, and because the finance meeting starts at 7 o'clock, right after.
And I love the last page of your report that has a beautiful picture of Lunenburg.
Unfortunately, I can't put those on. It's just a free template.
I did want to provide, there was an announcement I'd like to make because I see it on the upcoming meeting. So next Thursday, September 19th, is the Board Appreciation Gathering at the Eagle House from 6 to 8 p.m. That is to recognize all the volunteer boards, commissions, committees, etc. It's a good time for people who are interested in serving to meet with people on boards that they are interested in and get a good social contact about how that board operates and what it's like to work on it. So, and it's a good time to acknowledge the people who spend a lot of time serving the town in various capacities. So I invite everybody to come for that evening. Again, September 19th, Thursday, September 19th, next week from 6 to 8 at the Eagle House.
And I do have one piece I also want to add, sad piece of news about Jan Carrier. She was the Conservation Administrative Assistant. She passed away yesterday, so we'll send our condolences to the family.
And tomorrow, next week, I'll say more. I just found out about it today. I'll say more next week. I will say our hearts go out to her family and friends. She was a great public servant to the town, a wonderful woman, and provided a lot of service and years to the town. I'll say more next week.
She will be missed.
Yes, she will.
I had a question on the town manager's report. The mosquito control group did the spraying?
Yep.
Was it at no
Yes.
charge then to the town?
Right.
That's great. Now, will any of the other parks be sprayed, like Wallace Park and other places where people
We
congregate?
could request that, that's how I got the understanding, but the Parks Commission, we felt the Marshall Park.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it was close proximity to the area they were already going to be spraying as well.
It's upon request, so.
So the Parks Commission could request other fields, other, great. Couldn't you make a recommendation that they do that? Or talk to them about that?
I can. We're all hoping for a frost soon. Not that I want cold weather, but.
I think it's a little ways off.
Yes, I think so.
Now, let's do the rest of the housekeeping before we start on the rest of the meeting. So let's do the minutes.
Right here.
And warrants. And something else. What is the something else there?
Oh, this is the revised PJ Keating.
Okay.
The conditions were changed at the meeting.
And what else do we need here?
Thank you.
Is this the only place we need my signature? That's it? Okay. Okay, yep. All right, so we have accounts payable in the amount of $316,122.26. That's it for warrants. Action items. I have one. Do we have more news about the lift and the repairs to the lift that were noted? The door being impossible to open by somebody who has disabilities?
No, I know that the company came once to repair the door. I'll follow up.
Yeah, if we can follow up with the request and the,
You know, and on that topic, I was here for a planning board meeting and assisted somebody with the lift who was in a wheelchair and sort of witnessed all the shortcomings of not being able to open doors and utilize it if you're alone, and those things need longer term fixes. But what was most striking to me was I saw somebody going up the ramp, and when I was coming up the stairs, I looked down the hall, it was pitch black, and the reason I went down the hall was to flip on the lights. So if we're having evening meetings, if we could make a note to, at the very least, leave downstairs lights on, so if somebody's coming in the side door, it's lit. Because it was complete darkness, and that's why I ended up at the side door.
or replace that with motion detector lights, that hallway.
That would be
Perfect.
nice, thank you.
I have a question on the action items. What is the status of the report related to the ballot issue?
Yes, it is in I have been given a draft from the town manager, and I am reviewing it and then sending it back, and it will be either at next meeting or the first meeting in October.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, committee reports. Any?
I attended the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition meeting on August 22nd, where I learned that they were receiving an EPA Environmental Merit Award this morning at Faneuil Hall. Good for them.
Excellent.
The task force, as town manager mentioned, will be meeting Thursday evening. Hopefully, the annual report, due 9:30, is wrapped and ready to submit.
Just capital planning met for the first time today. Just reorganized, and we kind of set our schedule. We're going to prepare what we're going to send out to department heads, and hopefully send that out October 1st, and look for responses and start to hold interviews with department heads towards the end of October as they present their capital requests.
Excellent. Any other committee reports?
No. I tried to go to the Council of Aging meeting this morning, but it was postponed to next Tuesday.
Gotcha. Okay, is there anything on the discussion of articles for the town meeting? There's nothing for tonight, right?
Nothing for tonight.
Right, okay, so, all right, so we have the meat of the meeting here, 3 discussion items. So the first one is discussion regarding the letters from the APDC, which are about the old primary school, and then the related cost estimate from the facilities director. Everybody in their packet should have received should have read the letters from the APDC from August 26th, and actually the first one from April 16th. Has everybody read those?
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll open the discussion regarding those, and then we have also the facilities manager in town who gave us the cost estimate for the old primary school to make the structure weather tight and repair some obvious issues. There were 6 issues listed there. For those people at home, install 2 sump pumps with new hoses, roof repairs to bring it to watertight condition, do a downspout replacement, security alarm upgrade, window blocking and hardware, and miscellaneous hardware for repairs to the, I believe most of this, to the exterior of the building except for the security alarm upgrade. From the APDC, we have the response from Kit Walker, who's the facilities director, was in response to the items that were listed from the APDC letter of April 16th. And then the previous letter to that was last August. So I will open it up for discussion. If anybody from the APDC would like to start, or anybody from the board would like to start.
I'd like to start. So, reading the letters, one thing, and we have it included for us in our notes. So I referenced 113-2, the section that talks about demolition by neglect. And when I referenced it on the E-code, I couldn't find it. And so, talking with town manager today, I talked as well to the town clerk. It appears as though what was sent to the state Attorney General's office for approval excluded the section on demolition by neglect. So it is not officially part of our, although it was passed at town meeting, it's not officially part of our code right now. And I know that we need to talk to town council to figure out what the next steps to remedy that will be, because the timeline, as I understand it, is about 60 days from the time the vote happened, and that vote was in 2015. So, we're about 4 years overdue. But I think for the purpose of this conversation, I think we should talk as if it is actually in effect, knowing that it probably will be very soon.
And that was our intention.
And that was the intention of the town.
And may we pause for APDC to maybe call a meeting to order?
We're still in the session from earlier.
Do they need to call it? I mean, like, change I like open meeting law and all those rules, so I think it would help us to call your meeting into order here, since you changed locations.
So we have to return motion to adjourn.
Recess it. Recess it and then reopen it. But we'll assume you recessed it over there. Just open the meeting.
We have a quorum. Off order.
Would you like us to set up closer?
Closer to the action, yeah. Please. And you can bring chairs up. You can sit at the table. That would even be better.
Be better?
Do you have nameplates?
You got 2 microphones, 4 people. That's an easy division. Okay.
Borrow my name.
Oh, okay. They can share one. That's good. Okay. So, to your question, so now you've started your meeting.
Spread that down so much.
You had a point, so did you have a comment to that point about him, that that's not being filed?
Just that town council's been contacted and spoken with him about it, yet I did speak with the town clerk. It was an error.
I did bring this to the town clerk and the town manager's attention back in November of 2017 as we were drafting the regulations, which were also approved, which does include the demolition by neglect definition as well.
Previous
So-
town manager?
I'm sorry?
Previous town manager?
No,
Oh.
current town manager. I can forward you the email. I looked it up earlier when Chairman McGrath brought that to my attention, that was missing from the official, I guess, bylaws. So we do know that it was included in the article that was approved by voters at town meeting. We also do know that the voters at town meeting authorized the APDC to set up regulations around these contributing properties, which included demolition by neglect. So we focused our guideline and regulation creation based on those documents that were provided to us at the time that the town voted on those definitions. So that's how we had been operating before that. As we were finalizing the draft documentation, I was looking for the bylaws put into the document, and at that point I believe we were starting to use the E360 or the Ecode 360, whatever it is. And that's when I noticed that it was missing that definition for demolition by neglect from the approved bylaw, but we did include that definition in the regulations that we provided to.
So approved by the state? The bylaw approved by the state?
The bylaw that was approved by the voters of Lunenburg at town meeting included the definition for demolition by neglect. The bylaw that was presented to the state neglected to include that definition.
So it wasn't approved by the state because it was missing?
Correct.
That's what I'm understanding, and this information is 20 minutes old.
So it's bylaw by neglect, yes.
Yeah.
And if we've known about some of this and this concept was related to the last conveyance attempt and whatnot, why haven't we discussed the fact that the terms of which we're basing everything on don't actually legally exist?
Well,
I just covered that.
we're going to proceed tonight as if all those, since they were approved by the voters, we're going to proceed as if all of those exist, and we'll wait for town council to weigh in on how do we correct it at the state level and how do we resubmit it. It was duly voted. So we're going to proceed as if they were submitted to the state and that they are in force, because there is no other reasonable assumption to be made.
Well, and honestly, that it's a definition which is also included in the regulations, which went through multiple open hearings, and also received the blessing of this board in its incarnation at that time, before we put them into effect. So I believe there was certainly due diligence to make sure that definition was included in terms of how we relate to dealing with those situations.
Is there anything else from the bylaw that was voted in versus the bylaw that exists that went missing, or was that the only item?
It looks like there was also a definition for what design guidelines are, which references further section 9 of the bylaw, which is what we also base the definitions on.
Okay, so there's another
There's
piece
two
that's
definitions
different?
right out.
When they reformatted it, for whatever reason, this map got shoved up and covered over stuff.
Oh,
It doesn't make, I don't know why, but that's what happened.
That's what happened.
I think it was an oversight more than anything.
yeah, right.
Right.
So, I mean, the intent was there to have it in place.
And so we should act as though it is in place.
I would assume
Yes.
we should all act that way.
Yes,
That's how we design the guidelines and regulations based on what the voters at town meeting agreed to.
Is anyone for that friendly?
Okay,
No, no.
Well, I would just feel that the only thing that would make sense is town council's determination, but I think we can gather information based on what we have. But regardless of intents, these things can have such, I mean, we just mentioned the inability to vote for prohibition on marijuana was based on a mistake. And it doesn't always matter what the intent is, the negative consequences of an error can still be felt. And so we don't, I don't know how moving an image on something, you know, gets in the way of submitting a correct bylaw, but I think overall we will be very careful in the future that we're making sure that everything is as intended.
Technology.
okay, so let's go to the letter and because this got presented, the repairs, or the cost estimates for the repairs got provided to us at our last meeting. And it's, later on in our topic is what to do with the old primary school. So, we're looking at needing to approve or disapprove of, or go ahead with these repairs or not. And I don't know if there were questions from our board to the APDC that they'd like to ask.
I would just like to say I was a little taken aback by some of the comments at the last Board Selectmen meeting regarding the APDC. I thought there was some belittling about the function of the APDC and the power or the teeth that they have, which were voted on by the town of Lunenburg. So I think in belittling the APDC and the work that we have done and the Architectural Preservation District itself, we're doing a disservice to the voters who agreed to vote for this.
Well, at the last meeting, I want to clarify that, my question, I didn't certainly intend for it to be belittling to the work that any board or committee does for town. But certainly I was asking, I think, a point of, I just didn't know of what is the teeth of the APDC when it comes to the town. What authority do they have to force an action? And I didn't have an answer to that. And that's the reason why I think I spent time reviewing the bylaw and found that error that was there because I was reviewing the bylaw. So certainly it wasn't meant to be offensive, but I understand that it was offensive.
Little shocking when I saw that. But I appreciate that. I think we've talked about this several times at the APDC meetings, and I think our position is pretty clear that we need to do what we can to avoid further damage and decay to the building until we determine what is going to happen to that building. Either we're going to sell it, we're going to lease it, or we're going to tear it down. We don't know, because every time something comes up to town meeting, nobody's giving you guys the authorization to do anything. And in the meantime, it's falling further and further into disrepair, and it could become a hazard. And we want to prevent that from happening. The bones of the structure, and correct me if I'm wrong, were relatively sound. It's just that there's some structural things, like the parapets across the top, where there's some loose bricks that could be a danger to anybody walking by. And that the downspouts are stopping in the middle of the wall, which they're taking the mortar out between the bricks, and to the point where it's starting to crack the foundation in one of the corners. So these are things that we think you can stick a $20 hose on it and redirect the water away from the building to save some potential further damage.
I have a question. One of the articles that you referenced that didn't give the selectmen the authority they were looking for was a tear down of the building, or at least it was proposed. It wasn't even given the permission.
That was a citizen petition, right?
That was a citizen petition, but it was voted on and it was voted down. But during that time, has the APDC taken a position on what they would do if the town did request that the building be demolished?
No, we wouldn't
It's
take a
not
position
before us.
until that was an actuality. So that they would, yeah.
So you haven't taken even a hypothetical about what?
No.
I mean, is it something, well, I guess what I'm asking it plainly is it something that the APDC sees as an architectural building to preserve?
we see that as our mission is to preserve the architecture in the district. So that would come under our mission, would be to try to, that's what we're doing, that's why we're sending the letters, to try to get some action on the building, either sell it, maintain it, or if you're going to demolish it, then we'd have to look at that at the time.
So have you guys decided that, I mean, based on how I understood the rules, the bylaw to be, is that there has to be a decision that it's a building that contributes to the architectural preservation within the district?
It does, it is a contributing property by its age and by its architectural significance and history in the town.
So that was, I guess, part of my question. So there is a historical significance to the architecture.
Well, it's a historical significance because a lot of residents went to school there,
Well,
going way back.
that's not architectural.
Well,
That's not an architectural aspect, that's an age aspect. That means it's just old. So a lot of people went there because it's old.
And it's sentimental.
It's an example of early school architecture that's prevalent throughout Massachusetts and all the cities and towns. Brick school buildings from the late 19th century and early 20th century.
Okay.
So what's the town's plan for the building? Right now, we've heard nothing. It's a building that's over 75 years old. It's in the district. It falls under our jurisdiction to try and save that building. Until we hear another plan, we don't know what that is. Right now, you have demolition by neglect because you're not doing anything with it. It's our charter to make sure that that doesn't continue. So that's what we're here for.
Well, I mean, so when you talk about what is the town's plan, I mean, if you use a capital T for the town, you heard what their plan is. We put 3 plans in front of them, and every one of them, the town with the capital T has defeated. So it's not for lack of a plan, it's for lack of agreement on a plan. And I think that puts us all in a very difficult spot, because...
I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, if I may go on that, in terms of lack of agreement with the town, I'd say you could look at it in the opposite form, that the agreement is that they don't want to convey the parcel. So I think that's sort of like a launching point. Then if the town wants to keep that parcel, as they've stated 3 times by turning down the opportunity to convey it, then we should identify what keeping it means. That would be a next step.
But we also refuse to tear it down.
Well, the one interesting thing is a member just said that the options would be to sell, lease, or tear down. But there's also an option, and it has been, thrown around over the years, that the building could be utilized by the town. It has been looked at to be used as a potential town office building, or like a town hall. You have the Ritter Land Use Building. If we've outgrown this and we're considering putting millions into TC Passios as a potential town hall, we could potentially apply millions to this old school, and it could be a municipal office building. So I think I'd like to consider putting a 4th item there, that it could be sold, leased, torn down, or it could have a municipal future.
Or rebuilt.
Repurposed. Repurposed somehow.
Yeah.
Well, any of those repurposing, say rebuilt.
I didn't neglect that on purpose. I just think about it off the top of my head. But anyway, to repurpose the building or to tear it down, there are the 2 options.
And I've been an outspoken advocate for using the land there as an improved town common, and I walked the land this morning. And even if that building is maintained, there's still a really nice parcel of land around it where you could do, a tree lighting around a municipal building. You could do a band concert. There's a nice parcel all in through there, and there's a lot of old historic sugar maples and things like that. So it's a really great piece of land. And so my goal to see it preserved as municipal land and enhanced as a place for parking and park doesn't necessarily mean the building has to leave the piece of land. And I'll just make one more comment that was on my mind to put a little context, because everybody talks about the building being left as is in 2005 and not worked on since. My mother was working in the building when it was closed down, and so I both went to kindergarten there, but would go into the building, walk there after school to meet up with my mother. The building was in horrendous condition when people were working and going to school there up through 2004. Because it's a split level, half of the interior square footage is a basement, and people were very sick and very uncomfortable in those rooms because they were below grade. The gymnasium was, the wood was placed over dirt. There was no foundation under the gymnasium. So as we, talk about the building, it wasn't as if the town just abandoned it in 2005, like we do with many buildings. We abandoned it decades before that by not maintaining it prior to when we left it. So it's been neglected for a lot longer than the 15 years it's been vacant.
So that, I think, answers your question about the plan. I mean, part of our goals is, and that's on the agenda tonight, is to talk about what to do with that building. And yet again, try to come up with something that is palatable to the people of the town. And that has been obviously evading most of us. So, I mean, that's why I asked your position, because, I mean, there are factions. I mean, what are the factions? Now, there are people who say you should definitely sell it. There are people who say you definitely shouldn't sell it, but you shouldn't maintain the building. You should demolish it and create some kind of park. There are hybrids of that. I mean, so any option you can put down, somebody's for that.
And somebody's against it.
And I would guess if you took a straw poll, the majority of us would probably be on the side of doing what we can to maintain the building itself in its historical context.
Right.
So if you're asking for an opinion, that's my guess.
Okay.
We haven't voted on it, so
Right.
take that for what it's worth.
Now, we had a gentleman in public comment, Ron Dion, I don't know, from White Street. He's spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks, he's a contractor, going through it, and he was very upbeat about the bones of the building. And he felt that what we should do is preserve it and use it. And he doesn't think that that's crazy at all. And I was thinking that some of the things he mentioned, I don't think he's seen your list and Kit Walker's list, but it didn't seem to be totally in sync. It looked like he was talking, he said, I don't know, he didn't think it was that big a deal.
I appreciate the comments, but there is much more to making that a code-compliant, usable building than simply fixing elements that are there.
I don't think he was saying bringing it up to compliance or code. He was saying
Exactly what he said. That was exactly what he said. He said, bring it up to code. So, I mean,
Go back to the video.
Yeah, right. He was very upbeat about the bones of the building, as were you.
Well, and that was our understanding. We did walk the building with Kit at one point. Richard's the only carpenter or masonry expert on the district commission. So as we're looking at things, we may have missed some things that Kit may have come up with, which is where you might see some disconnect because we're not construction experts.
Yeah, right.
But there are some things that are just outright visible and potentially dangerous. That the flashing on the roof going in the wind it can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen the itemized list or the estimate for what it would cost to address the issues from Kit Walker, so I'm very interested to learn more about that.
Has anyone else not seen it?
pretty straightforward.
I don't know any of us have seen.
I'll hand mine over too.
Okay, so this is a one-time expenditure for approximately $11,000
Right.
that you feel
To seal the envelope.
to protect the building.
Yep.
Mhm.
So I have a generalized question. So most of the work for APDCs, as I understand, is people coming before you to make changes to their house. So how do you identify what properties are falling into disrepair, or rather demolition by neglect? Is there a process that you guys undergo to identify which buildings within the architectural preservation district are falling into this category?
No, there hasn't been a process. The house on the corner of White Street, we noticed was in distress just by driving by there. And so we approached the owner, and some people got together and did some work there as volunteers, cutting down brush that had grown up over the house, and a few other things there, to try to keep the moisture away from it, moisture being the enemy of the structure. But we haven't had a process. There hasn't really been much for demolition neglect in the district.
That's a great question.
Most people keep their properties up to date, but some people fall into financial disarray, or where things can go. They're elderly and they don't have the income to be. They have the house, but they don't have the income to maintain it. So it's usually obvious if there's something going on. I think that's been the only property that...
More observational.
Yeah.
So have you formally reached out then to any other property owners like you have with the town? Because that's an excellent question.
Yes.
What has triggered the APDC's request for this particular building to be worked on without the context of a specific policy to do so?
Well, and just like Richard was just saying, we did approach a homeowner.
But what's the trigger for deciding to?
Observation.
Yeah, that's just familiarity with the district and seeing that houses or building is in obvious distress.
So it's kind of like, I mean, I don't want to make light of this, but if you happen to notice it, it's not like there's like scheduled, we're going to drive around today.
No, not the police.
No, in our guidelines on page 18, we talk about, 18 and 19, we talk about demolition by neglect, and that is it's just a violation of normal procedure. So we would have to do those on a case-by-case basis, because there's no process for us to go to each individual home and evaluate the exterior of their home.
So everybody knows, does everybody understand where the APDC is coming from in the letter? So obviously it's within our board to discuss this repair estimate and decide what to do with it, but we are all, does everybody understand where the APDC is coming from, what their charge is, what their authority is?
Yes. Is the building condemned?
No. Any further questions for the APDC? Or any from the APDC members to our board?
I guess just, how do we move forward with a plan for the building? Are there items that maybe could be put on for a vote by the town? Maybe there are a number of different scenarios that, with costs, and they're spelled out in the town votes on which one they would like to pursue. I'm just trying to throw it out. I'm not sure how do we get there?
Right.
It's one of our goals for this year to come up with this plan. Do you think the building's going to fall into a worse situation by the spring of next year?
Yeah, deterioration, water getting in the walls from the roof, and the parapet, water running down the back of the building from the roof, deteriorating masonry. When water starts getting in, it's a snowball effect every season. The damage accelerates.
Well, when we were walking through there as well, we saw where the ice had buckled even the second floor. From the ice from the water damage, the ice that formed in the basement to the point where it had buckled the second floor as well.
Yeah, definitely a feeling that it's right on that tipping point where we need to do something now, where it's going to rapidly start getting worse. Like it's okay now, there's still something to save.
Right.
in a couple of years.
The curve is a steep drop off.
Yeah.
Now, have
Brian,
you-
To your point, Selectman Adams at town meeting said, we haven't allocated any money to these municipal buildings at all. So I know that that's something that you've thought about, and that something needs to be done to these municipal buildings to prevent anything. We haven't obviously looked at, like Brooks House or any of the other buildings. From what we can tell, they're architecturally sound. And unless they're maintained, we can't.
They're not
be
gonna
sure.
be.
I certainly
Yeah.
think there's several paths where the building stays, and in which case $10,869 is a very small amount of money to spend to keep that a possibility. More important to note is I see a lot of it as a safety feature. I mean, you have a building that if, God forbid, there was a fire and you're sending firemen into it and stuff, if there's things deteriorating its structure, et cetera, as it sits there, we have a responsibility for it to be safe. Seeing that $2,000 of those dollars is for security alarm upgrades and whatnot, I think that we owe it to anybody who might have to interface with that building to make sure that it's secure and being looked after while we own it. And so I think this is something that we should do.
Wasn't a month or so ago, wasn't the public safety using the building for exercises?
I think they do training there. I've seen all the
Yeah.
fire equipment around it before, and I'm like, oh, what's
Yeah, well, I know
happening?
they were doing it one day, I think it was band concert day, and then there were just all of a sudden everybody going down to the lake because somebody crashed their jet ski. But but to your point, yeah, if they're doing training exercises there, I think that would be a safety issue for public safety.
Well,
Now,
none
have
of
you
this-
seen Kit Walker's list? You just saw it
Oh, we
now,
just saw
right?
it today.
Right. So it would be good to get them to weigh in on it, don't you think?
This isn't going to make the inside of the building safer at all. It's a
No, it's-
security alarm is like cameras, so vandals don't get in. It's not making the building safe.
No, it's just
No, but
structure.
the
It's just
Maybe fire
it's-
alarm
it's-
as well. I'm not sure if that's, I mean, there are probably improvements there that could, I'm not sure if there's much of any.
It's
I
just
don't
sealing the envelope,
I think there is a
right?
fire alarm in there.
So we should add one.
One of the things that we noticed when we were doing the walk around is there's the basement part where the sump pump is coming out of the window, but the window wasn't secure. Anybody could have opened up that window and gone inside.
Somebody could get hurt in there, and what's the
Very
liability
easily.
of the town, so.
And so I think, sealing the envelope, doing these things, we did mention that to Mr. Walker. I'm assuming he's addressed them since then. But, yeah, it is a safety issue. And it's an architectural preservation issue.
Now, I guess one of my questions for Heather would be, we have been allocated some money, right, to study the demolition of the building, but also in that as well, there's things we're just not doing, like we could do a hazardous assessment of the building, and those are items that we need no matter what happens. And I think some of the steps we could take are starting to understand, the hazardous assessment and things like that. And we haven't taken steps in those directions, and I think it's probably time, whether we demolish it or fix it or anything, we're not taking steps towards understanding the building's needs more. Well, this is probably a little bit of a step, but not very far.
If, I think what you're referring to is funding that was put into the bond bill. So it's not funding that was allocated, it's funding that we would have to be released by the governor. So there's a process to that, and if it's ever released. A lot of the times, these bond bill.
What's the
amounts
process to release it?
They have to approve the bond. The legislature would have to, well, the legislature has, the governor would have to release the bond.
And do we need to advocate for that?
Continued advocacy doesn't hurt, doesn't mean it will,
And are we advocating for it?
not recently.
But do we have it's a line item in the capital plan for hazardous material abatement there. Have we done the assessment, or is that included in the line item for?
That's the hazardous,
Yeah,
no, was,
because it came out of the Vertex report, right?
Yes.
Then it was $309,000 to abate the hazardous materials.
yes. That was the estimate.
Question for town manager, is this building still under the town's umbrella insurance, including liability?
Yes.
Okay. That to me is a huge factor in my decision with this. Okay. So I think we have to debate this for now. Team, we know where their position is. Obviously, they would like to see this, even though they didn't take a vote on it and they only saw it tonight. I'm gonna presume that they would like to see this move forward at the very least. So we're at.
Mr. McQuaid, as an architect, what's your point of view on this building?
I have a soft spot for the building, and I've advocated for it for a long time, since I was on the Historic Commission 7 years ago or so, but I really, taking a realistic look at it, I have to take exception to the statements that the building has good bones. I think it's farther gone than a lot of people are willing to admit,
In
and
what way?
the structural elements, rebuilding of the floors, and again, outside of just fixing something there, taking it and making it code compliant and usable for somebody else is a completely different story. Making it accessible, bringing up all the building systems to code. I mean, just the hazardous, like I said, just abating the asbestos is $300,000. You can add a sprinkler system, fire alarm systems. The building didn't have air conditioning, it had a boiler. The electrical system's not there. I don't know what bones people are saying are good. There's maybe the walls maybe, but what else is a good bone that's in there?
We need new windows too.
Yeah, so I mean, I truly do like the building. I went to school there too, but realistically, the money that's gonna take to make that building a usable building seems astronomical.
So we don't know what's possible as far as development, if it was sold until it was on the market, and if somebody was interested and did all the cost assessments and thought about whether it was worth it, that probably would entail building something on the adjoining property to make it worth it.
Probably,
And that's the catch-22. The point is, we can't really get to that,
Right.
because if we haven't allocated, or given governance to the Board of Selectmen, and we just put it out without that conveyance, then the business community generally is not going to reply, because there's an uncertainty whether they would even get the property anyway.
Two comments. What adjoining property do you mean?
The land goes with it. Okay, so anyone interested in the property in order to make it financially viable would probably want to build adjoining structures on that land if it was sold.
Okay, because we do have the Historical Society. I don't know what portion of that land there's an easement for parking. So there's a lot of, and now that School Street has been utilized more formally as a road to a residence, there's a lot of new pieces to that parcel that would be in play. Yeah, no, I think 2009 was it that somebody really truly tried to turn that into senior housing?
Yeah, before the
And the ultimate decision for that developer, without getting the correct grants, was it wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
Because it's such an expensive project, and I know Mr. Ebersol would speak about that project and would speak about other experiences he had and how expensive it is and whether or not it's feasible for somebody to use the building. So I would say my biggest concern, because I so deeply value the land beyond the building, because there's been other structures there like the center school that are long gone and the land's still with us. So I would put the land ahead of the building. If we're seeking to sell it so somebody will preserve it, developers do everything they can until they get their way, and it's going to be gone. So if it's going to be gone, in my opinion, which I think people would pursue eliminating the building, a developer would make a far better profit if that building were gone. I stick with advocating for the land above the building.
Well, they wouldn't be able to get rid of the building because we still have the APDC. We would not allow that to happen.
And any sale or lease would also have a term that they can't do that.
It would be out of the
It's a
town's hands. It
non-point.
would be in the hands of the APDC, and
No,
it may
it's-
not be the folks that are here now, and they could ultimately give permission for it to be knocked down.
But there's terms
true or
of
false.
terms of
No,
sale or
No,
lease.
but true or false, the commission could give permission for the building to be knocked down.
But when you agree
You're
to
putting it in the hands of four
No,
or
you're
five
not. No,
people.
you're not. When you when you transfer it to somebody, if you sell it or lease it, you put the agreement, put it in writing in the deed, protect the building. it doesn't leave it up for open interpretation in the future. It's part of the transfer of the property. You
could
protect it.
state it in the sale that you can't do that, so. but
And if the
that-
town votes to demolish the building, I mean, I would imagine that that would supersede any authority that APDC would have.
Town as a whole doesn't necessarily vote to demolish it. I mean, there
If there
are
was
ways,
an
there are
article.
ways that it could be
Gives the
demolished
Board of
without that.
Selectmen the authority to proceed.
Right. So that's one way. So you could put directly to the town people if you want, sure, like it was done in the citizen petition. So there are different ways to do it.
I appreciate your feedback today.
Well, I appreciate you all coming here today. And again, this is going to be something we need to do, and it's one of our 3 big goals is to find out what to do with that building. So I think that's what we're going to try to move on to in the agenda tonight.
To all of you, I hope you reach a consensus.
Yep, I appreciate it.
I assure you it won't be a consensus.
Heather, is there money available right now in Kit's budget and whatnot to allocate these funds? I mean, is this money available somewhere?
I would have to talk to the DPW director and the facilities.
Is there budget money available for miscellaneous repairs in town buildings?
There's money available, but I'm not sure what projects are lined up for those funds. So that's why I'd have to talk to them.
Okay,
So that would be something to do.
we should know that.
I can't answer that question tonight.
I'd like to make a motion that the APDC adjourn at 8:30. It sounds like they're done with us.
Workshop is concluded, yes. Second that.
Second, all right.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you.
And I guess to stay on this topic and not to kick
you,
the
guys.
can, I think that these repairs have been identified and we should not sit on it. So I would make a motion that we, using hopefully money that is currently available, repair these items that have been identified for the $10,869.85, so we don't have further disrepair while we find a solution for the parcel.
I would second that for the purposes of discussion.
Well, I would say that it's, again, I am not for anything that's not going to identify where the money's coming from. So I would not vote for anything that says on the hopes that we have the money. I think in principle we can agree potentially, but not until the town manager identifies where the money's coming from.
There are plenty of other projects and items in town that $10,869.85 could be used for or probably already allocated for. So yeah, without knowing where it's coming from or who else it's affecting, I couldn't possibly support a motion like that.
Last meeting, I think I stated very clearly, I don't think we should spend another penny on this building until we have a disposition identified. So, I mean, I understand, the position of APDC, and I respect their hard work, but as far as, where we are today, I can't support spending a penny on this building.
I see this list as mostly safety items and having a building that, there's situations like the Worcester warehouse fire and things where buildings become dangerous, but people still have to enter them. I think this is a very small list of safety concerns, and I think that that's why I'm making the motion that we actually put a little bit of thought into it. I mean, the building needs millions of dollars, but $10,000 to keep it a safer environment seems like a good thing to do.
But none of these are safety concerns. What improves safety? This is all weather sealing, except for the security alarm, which is just going to be so you know when somebody comes in.
There's windows that people could currently enter. I think sealing that up would be good. Security alarm upgrade. Talking about the water coming in and sort of further deteriorating the structure. I think water can do a lot of structural damage, so I do see it as safety features.
Window blocking, just to clarify, is for
plywood over the window?
It's plywood over windows. So rather than having a building that's sitting there with, 1 or 2 broken windows, or not really 1 or 2, we'd have a boarded up building in the center of town. I mean,
So my feeling is, why I asked the town manager if it's still under insurance, is that if it's liable, first of all, people getting in and potentially getting hurt, $10,000 will pay for the first 10 minutes of their attorney if somebody gets hurt in that building. So that's number one problem that I have. Number two is,
I guess I don't understand your point. are you in favor of this or not in favor of this based on that statement?
I'm in favor of this for three
Okay.
reasons. That's reason number one. Reason number two is the town, we asked them to take up the architectural preservation district, and they have come through with a determination under their authority that the town vested in them. And I think to blatantly ignore it is to undermine the whole committee to begin with, and why did we get a committee? It applies to the town as much as it applies to residences, and I think we should do that. And that leads into number three, which is nobody knows on this board, and nobody knows what the town meeting is gonna vote for or against. And by not doing these, you are effectively taking one of them off the table, which is that the building will ever be reused. So of the four options that were identified, that it would be sold, leased, rebuilt, or demolished, three of those are taken off the table if you don't do this, because eventually it gets to the point where the first three aren't even possible. And unless this board is gonna vote for that, and I certainly am not ready to vote for that without a plan to know what to do, I think it makes sense to button up the building, but I won't vote for it until we find out, A, that we have the money, and where it's coming from, or it's gotta be part of the new budget. I mean, I'd like to see it done this year before the winter comes.
May I amend my motion that if there's money available in the Department of Public Works budget for miscellaneous repairs, so if it's available, we allocate the $10,869.85 to do these repairs.
I wouldn't say if money's available in miscellaneous repairs, just say if money's available.
In their budget.
Madam Town Manager, will you know whether there was this money available by next meeting?
How do we not know? Can we look it up?
Because Jack has a budget, he has a list
Well,
of
there are
things he's gonna do.
There are things that
But can we-
get put into, what is the?
But he knows what he hasn't done yet, so
We know
he
how much, there
knows.
should be a place where we know how
Right,
much
but-
money we
but
have.
What is that
Right.
called when you?
I would
when you lock in money, but you don't know the
But
final
this-
amount?
But there's planned expenditures over the course of the year. It's like you can't just say, okay, right now we have $40,000, it's available to use. There's things that come up throughout the year.
With
that
all due
are
respect, for the
expended.
purpose of this meeting, it would be nice to know or be presented with what is available if we were to do this.
But you're missing the point. There's a laundry list of things that Jack doesn't have money to do. We need to decide what's okay to jump the line over to spend this money.
Right.
There's never $10,000 that we just don't know what to do with. I mean,
Well, there is sometimes at the end of the fiscal year, but now we're in the beginning of the fiscal year. So we're gonna be trying to preempt something 2-3 months into the fiscal year, and that's dangerous to do.
It's not that much money. We were talking earlier this evening about this very topic. Sometimes it seems like a gigantic amount of money, and sometimes it seems like a drop in the bucket, depending on your point of view and who's talking.
Well, with all due respect, the topic we were talking about earlier this evening has to do with a town article that the town gets to vote to raise the money for, and this one is gonna come out of a budget that the town already approved. There's a huge difference between that. The town gets to decide whether they wanna spend new money in an article because it's before them. But if they've already approved a budget, this was not part of the budget. Presumably, the budget is built around things that we know or anticipate we're going to do, and now you're adding $11,000 to that. When people were on the floor of town meeting trying to move money around, it's not as simple as knowing whether you can, with 10 months to go in the fiscal year, whether we have $11,000.
So,
Now,
Mr. Chair, you for or against it?
am I for or against what? I already
motion
said
to
very
allocate
clearly
the
that
money.
I'm for it if we identify that we have the money, which I'm asking the town manager if we can know that by next week.
So I amended the
And I-
motion to say if the money's available,
So
we would
I-
like to
I have one question.
do these repairs.
I would like to do a sort of a sanity check on, are these the repairs?
Well, that's, I haven't said too much yet, but that's my question too, which is these are not contractor numbers, not by a long shot. So, I mean, is Kit the one that's going to be doing this?
So everything but the roof repairs, it would be done in-house.
And so, I just like a sanity check on, okay, is this what we need to do to seal the envelope? Is this enough? Are these the right things? I certainly respect Kit, but, the APDC hasn't even looked at this. I'd like to get a second opinion in,
Well, I mean-
is this it, or really, is it 20,000? Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, what he's proposing here is to board up, it's to board up the windows, to put in some additional, at 125, plastic downspouts, and then to do some minor repairs, to the roofing as an estimate, 7,500. I don't know many contractors that are going to touch that, and then to put in some sump pumps to help push water out of the building and to make sure that we have some alarm system when people come to the building. To me, that doesn't really do too much, other than keeps people out officially. But as far as, the preservation aspect, I met with Kit last week, very respectable person. I trust that these are the numbers that he came up with. But as far as when we have a report that says that, this is going to cost millions of dollars to bring this thing up to code, 10,000,
Well, this isn't up to code, this is
seems like a
just,
drop in the bucket that's just,
Yeah.
what is this really doing?
And I want to know what roof repairs is. Is that just flashing?
Yeah.
Your $7,500 from a contractor is not getting you hardly anything.
It just says water
3
tank
days.
condition, so I'm guessing they would just fix places where there's leaks.
That's
can't
2
just-
people for 3 days.
well, that's why I thought a sanity check is good.
So, Madam Town Manager, I will ask, do you know if Mr. Walker, when he prepared this estimate, was it based on the 6 items that are identified in the APDC's letter of 4/16/2019?
He was given the letter as a reference to do an assessment of the building and the repairs to it, yes.
Okay, so this is his, if I can, just layman's terms, this estimate is his idea of remedying the problems that they identified.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is from August of this year. Okay, so this is.
No, not August.
August
This is from
20th.
April of this year.
No,
The August one is from last year.
No, August, the.
The recommendations of repairs.
Kit
Oh,
from
yeah,
August.
this Kit's estimate, yeah,
Yes.
it's just from a couple of weeks ago, yeah. So, if their letter from April is addressed by this, that's fine with me. We're not doing anything except taking care of these things and showing that we're taking their considerations seriously and trying to keep people out of the building.
But the chair said, they're not contractors, they were depending on their one member who has experience in the field. So, even they weren't totally committed to, and they hadn't seen the list of the items. So, again, I think we need a sanity check on, is this enough? Is this what we should do?
So what are you suggesting that we do? What does this sanity check mean?
This list isn't from the APDC for the repairs. This is from Kit, and he's the person who takes care of the building.
Right, he's our facilities
So
director.
I think this is valid information.
I would take the same
I mean, we're
assumption.
paying him to provide this service.
Yeah, I think that, the architect on this board and the contractor and property manager on this board, the two of, not that our experience at the end of the day has any more weight and when it comes to decisions than anyone else's opinions and feedback, but I think our opinions seem to be that this is not going to do too much.
But I think the APDC would
Do you think it
not
will,
agree with you.
do you think it will seal the envelope?
No, I think this is going to board up the building and let us know when people are trying to get into a boarded up
I
building.
think it'll be more sealed than if we didn't do it.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It will be more sealed, but it's not sealing the building. It's stopping maybe bulk water from getting in, but moisture will still continue to get in.
Yeah, it gets humid here, and can you imagine at your
Moisture
own
is
house
different
not
than
turning the
water.
heat on all winter long?
Right.
Right.
You can't. We
There
live in
was
New England, so
several
moisture
feet of
gets in
standing
everything.
water in there this past winter, like a basement pool.
And there probably still will be after this, too.
Right. Again, I'm saying I could get on board with doing this for all the reasons that Mr. Alonso said, but without having any discussion with the DPW director about who this is affecting when you take the money away, what he has for resources, I can't vote yes for it right now. Come back with a presentation and then we'll talk about it, but I can't hypothetically get on board with it.
I'd like the finance director to weigh in, I'd like the town manager certainly as the head of the budget to weigh in before we redirect things from the budget that weren't there in the town meeting just a few months ago. So I'd ask for a week that we'd be able to do that.
Yep. With the caveat, there are some projects that we have upcoming that you never know what the costs are going to be until the bids come in.
Right.
So those projects may have to be supplemented with budget funds.
For example?
For example, if the town hall ramp project, if it comes in over $27,000, it's going to have to be supplemented with the town meeting appropriation.
Right. So come back with your estimate, your evaluation of this request, of whether we can cover it within the budget.
Okay.
And if that's the caveat, then that's the caveat, but at least we know. Is that okay? Because the building's not going to deteriorate, let this long, it's not going to deteriorate in 1 week.
Well, Mr. Chair, we do have a motion in a second.
If the motioner wants to take a vote, we can take a vote.
Based on Kit's recommendation, I'm comfortable with my motion and his input.
Okay. So the vote is to go ahead and approve this. What was the wording? Assuming that there's funds? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I would make a motion that if there's money available in the DPW's budget to assess these safety concerns, that we allocate the $10,869.85 to help do the minimal repairs to stabilize the building.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Did you vote?
Yeah, no.
So 3 to 2, 2 to 3, it fails. We'll put it on
I'll
next week.
still, speak with the director about the budget.
Yep. All right. Okay, so now presumably we have two things. We have both of our goals. One of them is to identify, define, discuss, and finalize the criteria to be used in determining the use and the reuse of the following buildings: Town Hall, Ritter Building, Old Primary School, Brooks House, TC Passios Building. We would schedule a meeting. Action 1 would be schedule a meeting and discussion sessions to get the input from the widest variety of voices possible. Now, presumably, objective 1 needs to be defined before we go to objective 2, which is define the old primary building, because that would define the criteria. It's 8:45. What I would say, I'd like to at least start that conversation, and we can have that. I don't know how long it lasts, and Mr. Jeffries handed out his thoughts on the criteria. We have people in the audience if they would like to participate in that, but I think we should come up, at least for the list, and it won't be finalized tonight, but at least we'll have a list of what people are thinking about when they evaluate any scenario that comes up with these buildings.
So for the folks at home and for you who are here, what I thought for how we can do this is, I worded this in the form of questions, 8 questions. The first one is the building safe? Second one is the building doing what it was intended to do and does it meet the current needs of the community? Question 3, is it likely that the building will meet the needs of the community in 30 years or 50 years? Question 4, is there adequate parking? Question 5, can all residents come in and out of the front door regardless of disability? Question 6, are town employees in different departments co-located? Question 7, can the building be expanded to meet future needs? And question 8, is there a clear future necessity of retaining the land?
So I think that's a good starting point. If people want to comment or add, I'm going to give it to the board for a second. Becky, and then, are there any criteria that people, other than these, or do they object to some of these?
I think it's a great list, just because it's so important to me. Item 8, where it says, is there a clear future necessity of retaining the land, rather than saying, is there a necessity, say, what could a future land use be? Because there could always be a need. is there a clear future necessity? I think we could say, what could the future use of the land be? Just to keep it a little more positive.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of that being my favorite item. But I think this is a great idea to put together questions and take it building by building, because I think you open up a lot of really good discussion about the building, like TC Passios being currently used by the schools again. Those are real things we need to talk about, so I like this.
So is this criteria that we're setting up, is this for how we look internally about how we choose to use these buildings forward, or how would we analyze a proposal for someone else or a future use of the?
Well, I think the idea was to create a measuring tool that we would weigh proposed options with the buildings, and what would we weigh them against? Like, what are, some of these are criteria that Mr. Jeffries pointed out, that you would say, oh, does it meet these criteria? You know, and I think that's what it is. Otherwise, how do you judge, how do you, to the best way possible, how do you objectively judge the different options that people are presenting?
So if it's, well, yeah, I just wanted to make clear if it's, yeah, how we would weigh what someone is proposing versus, it's not just us sitting here with, looking at the buildings and saying, oh, do we need it or not? That's not what we're trying to do.
No, well, you could, I mean, again, I think he, in his list, addresses need. Yeah, it says the number 2, is that, does it, the second part of number 2, does it meet the current needs of the community?
Well, I would, a criteria for any other future proposal would be, does the proposed use add value to the community?
That's a good one. So that would be like as we were looking, as Selectman Adams was talking about question number 8, and kind of revising that to say what's the future use or potential, then that would seem to be like a part of that then. Does the proposed use add value? That seems to go together. I know my handwriting's awful.
And by value, what do we mean financial? Do we mean emotional? Do we mean historical? Value is very difficult because I value pieces of town center in a nostalgic way or historic way. So I hate to think of, you know, like, oh, it's worth 1.5 million. It's like you can't buy things back. Based on some of these questions that are surfacing, I think I see our role as selectmen representing the town, that we should really dig through this from a municipal perspective. What are municipal needs, school needs, town needs, and stop worrying so much about the concept of anything being sold at this point, and really make sure we're meeting all of our needs. We have a lot of needs with ADA compliance, with the booming population of the schools, and I really think we do ourselves justice to really focus on these questions as municipal owners of the land before we seek any concept of conveying, especially because the town has been offered the opportunity to convey these buildings 3 times, and I've said no. So I really think we'll have better success talking about all of this if we focus on meeting all of our municipal needs first and then see what's left over later. We're trying to maybe give away things or get rid of things without clearly understanding our needs. I think if we go through these questions, identify all our town needs, then if there's things we don't need, that'll surface. I don't think that should be on the forefront of any of these conversations.
Well, when I said value, I meant social, cultural, economic, not economics, all the other things, social, cultural, historical value. Does it add life to the community, basically, is what I'm trying to say.
Do we have participation potential here?
Yes, Becky. Please come to the table because we want to hear your voice in full amplification.
Good to see you again.
Sorry, my voice is not what it should be.
Identify yourself.
Yeah, I'm Rebecca Lantry. I live at 251 West Street. I'm also the Historical Commission chairperson. Your one question there that said that they must enter through the front door. Well, then give them all up. Give up the town hall, give up the Ritter, give up the old primary, none of those things are ever going to be accessible because they were built in a different time. So it must be accessible is our job, but not through the front door. That word has to go. Because you're sealing the deal on all these buildings right now. If that's,
I thought about that myself, so
Well-
I'm glad to see you agree that.
There are building code requirements to that too.
right, if you spend money and upgrade to a certain point, then you must make it ADA compliable, but it doesn't mean that it has to be through the front door.
Yes, it does.
That
If you
might
spend
not-
over a third of the value of the building,
Through the front door?
Yes.
yes.
Because I've dealt with this before in Boston and everything else, and we had to make an elevator lift and everything else to make it
A
accessible.
third of the value of the building in Boston is different than a third of the value of the building
What
here.
is the rules, just so we know?
If you spend over $100,000, you need an accessible entry point. If you spend over a third of
Entry
the,
point.
there's several layers. If you spend over a third of the value of the building, it needs to be through the main entry.
Yeah, that's the current ADA. So, and that's why I purposefully put that in here, because anything that we talk about, I mean, it's any change we make to any building, it's going to be for a long time.
Can you
And
reference
I
that?
would not want us to be
The
non-compliant
Architectural
with
Access Board,
this for a
AAB.
long time.
They're all online.
So we have to make sure that it's not a third, over a third of the value of the building.
Well-
We'll spend just the
I think we should be focusing on trying to make buildings accessible for all people and not trying to find ways to skirt around.
But they can be accessible. This building is accessible because of the side ramp. It's just that it was built before that was an issue. And so you can't go back and make it different. You know, you can provide accessibility so that people can access every part of this building that they need to, but you can't do it through the front door because of steps, because of repeated steps up to here and stuff.
And ADA, I think, looks at that as, and I think the question, and I understand what you're saying, but I think the question on the federal side, it's about shared dignity, that everyone should have the same access to everything. And that is why the current building codes, require everyone to be able to come into a front door.
There's no
There's a
grandfathering.
nuance here in terms of defining a
There
front
is.
door. For example, if you added on to Old Primary and there was a sketch done, I think it may have been in the TAPE or something years ago, 2015 or something, the front door of the Old Primary School is a split level entrance. No matter what anybody ever does that, you can't really ADA a split level in the context that that building exists. But the drawing was an addition on the side where that would be your main entrance. You would interface with a elevator right away. And so therefore, defining your front door gives you flexibility. You could now say through this addition, this is our main lobby, this is our main entrance. That is now the antiquated historic door. And so I think we're getting lost in the weeds here because you could, do something to say, this is our main entrance here at the side now. We no longer use that antiquated front door. So I don't think we should debate doors here.
Well,
And
no,
I
it has
agree
to-
with you that accessibility is the goal. And we actually had a public commenter here who is in a wheelchair say that they appreciate the history. So we're assuming that we're picking people's points of view. Just because somebody is wheelchair bound doesn't mean that they may not be okay accessing a building differently and understand its historic needs. So I don't think we should get stuck on little things like this or we're never going to make progress. So I like your recommendation to remove the front door and be more open-minded about these structures.
Which should say main entry, which is code.
Yes,
and you
main entry.
can't,
Main
you can't
entrance is-
second guess the value of the ADA and Architectural Access Board, that's law.
Main entrance is different than front door, so
Yeah,
that would
right,
be an
you can say
improvement
main
to the
entry.
question, so, thank
In
you.
the idea of criteria, why don't we just make that criteria reduced to full ADA compliance?
There we go.
Let's keep these short. I mean, again,
Is a building fully ADA compliant?
Yeah.
just, no, I mean, just bullet.
Are we
Full
meeting
ADA
ADA
compliance, that's one of the criteria. Now, the one criteria that's not on here, by the way, and I'll be the stickler who says it because it's gonna be the one that judges most things, and that's cost. So I'll put in there, I don't know that it should be near the top or near the bottom, but it's certainly not, it's not a criteria.
Cost effective.
I just thought, I mean, the
What-
cost
what would the
of doing
total-
any of these projects is gonna be important.
Yeah, what are the financial implications of any project?
And we have a lot of data
I like
from
that, financial
Vertex
implications.
and stuff where we can
That
start
sounds
piece
much more-
together ideas. We
What
already know
about
some of the costs.
whether the building is currently inhabited by employees or
Is it currently in use?
Well, we know that.
I know, but
talking about a criteria, though?
And there's other
Do you
people.
want
is,
Okay.
But I mean, if it has to
are you
be,
available? Do you want to come up? Come on up.
I mean, if it had to be in current use, that would knock the old primary out right away, so.
Well, it's not whether,
Well, forget
it's not a yes or no, it's just a criteria to think
Forget
about.
about the buildings themselves that we're doing. Think about the criteria about how you will judge them. Because I'm assuming current use is important because that involves moving people, which involves the financial implication. I love that much better than cost. That's the best spin word I've heard today.
Yeah, current
Yes,
current
Mr.
use should be under consideration.
So, George Martin, 522 Bird Street. I was just going to stay on topic, where you were talking about the
ADA?
No, the 8 measurements for what we do with buildings or whatever.
Right?
Yeah, so, some feedback I want to give to your point about having everybody under one roof. For my tenure on the Finance Committee, I struggled the entire time to understand what that meant and what the value of that is. And that's based on hearing the different budgets from the different directors coming in constantly and talking to the land use director.
Adam, Adam.
Last fall. One of the things that he mentioned was the implementation of new building permitting software. So I asked, how's it going? How's that working out? It's working great. Is it cutting down on traffic coming to town hall? Absolutely. He says, there aren't a lot of builders and contractors who want to take time out of their busy day to come up to town hall to fill out permits and to track it. Whereas this new software that got implemented, and it's still fairly new, it's got a workflow engine in it. So when it goes to the building office for some kind of a sign off, it automatically routes over to the assessor's office. And then they do something with it, and then, it's being routed to whoever needs the next signature. So there's no need to be walking across the street handing paper back and forth to each other. It's all automated at this point. And this is just the first instance of technology and a significant implementation of it and the benefits of it. So then I sit back and I say, okay, so the building people aren't coming up here as much anymore. Well, I would think that they would be here more than anybody else because they're always trying to build projects and they need a permit from electrical or whatever. And, so I said, okay, well, we're seeing less of a need to have interfacing with people in a building. It's sort of all happening in the cloud, okay? And the more I thought of it, it's like, well, wait a minute, now when I pay my mortgage payment, it goes to a lockbox in Fitchburg. That's been outsourced. They process it, give the data back to the accounting people here. When I pay my taxes, I don't come up here and pay it. I pay it online. And, the few times, as a resident, that I've come into this building, it's been because I needed, my dog tax were late, or my tax payment was late. I have never ever seen a line downstairs. It's not like the old registry days. So I see this stuff, I'm like, I don't get it. It's like, I talk to my neighbors, how have you guys ever gone to town hall? Never. Why would we want to do that? Granted, I know that there's a need for more meeting space, but in order to run town government, I don't really see the need to have all this under one roof. We need to get better with, we need to, first of all, workflow studies. Really? Why is it we need all these people under one roof? What kind of paper is going back and forth? What does that do to the taxpayers as far as level of service? Are we killing them because it takes too long? Matter of fact, Adam told me that in the workflow for building permits, if somebody happens to be out for vacation, the person who forwarded that to him gets some kind of a timely email that comes back and says, this person didn't react to it. And then, Adam might be always on vacation, so he's gonna like send it back and, push it back and just keep the process going. So it's not like it's sitting on a stack of paper on somebody's desk waiting for them to come back, because somebody knows that the process is failing or is being postponed, for a taxpayer. So, I see all this and I'm like, I take, like my work situation, I work for a Fortune 500 company. None of us work in a building anymore. The trend in the industry is you work at home. And it's becoming very uncommon to drive into Boston on 128, the traffic, the inconvenience. My wife works for a company, they're putting out a brand new building and relocating to Boston. They're not putting enough parking spaces in because they don't want the employees to come in. They want to work from home and stay productive. So when I make these comments, it's like, in my opinion, putting up buildings is old. I really can't see people doing it anymore without at least getting the processes efficient and running. And then if that doesn't work, well, yeah, okay, then you go to plant meeting and you stuff everybody in the same building so we talk to each other.
Yeah, and that was, I worked remotely today, as an example. I work from home today. And, I hardly ever go into my main office in Boston. I'm usually at a property somewhere else. And I completely understand what you're saying. I think that, my view, though, is that culture, we have town culture among the employees. And, information exchange, it's good that, for example, the building department because probably the physical situation, it creates the need to look for alternatives and saying this isn't working, walking back across the street all the time. And so I think it helps, make people be a little more informed for some of these workarounds. But ultimately, I think there's value over the water cooler. I think there's a lot of value when people are co-located as far as the exchange of information. That's not always the technical, this is my job and how it relates to your job, but sometimes just the interdepartmental conversations, you may learn something or pick up on something and be able to contribute in a way that you otherwise wouldn't be able to if you're in a different location. And then the other thing is also that when someone comes to town hall, if on that off chance that they need to come to town hall, and I'm always trying to think of the worst case scenario where it is someone with mobility concerns and they have to come to town hall. Now, do they really know where to go? And I think, the setup we're in right now is they might accidentally come here and have to get stuck and get stuck in the elevator or, wait on the side of the building for someone to realize they're there to open the door. And then they now have to go across the street and do the same thing over there, only to find out that they really should have been at TC Patio's.
Not to be disrespectful.
Which I won't take disrespect anyway.
My position as a taxpayer is, do you have the data to support that feeling? How often has somebody gotten stuck in that elevator?
The same person is getting stuck more than once.
Right.
I had to use that for 7 months. It took me 10 minutes to get from my car to that chair when I had foot surgery. I never had a problem with it. Yeah, maybe you need some wallpaper in there or something, but,
I think the town manager, you can probably speak to.
I know, one person that's got stuck in the elevator multiple times, or chairlift, and it's broken down a number of times since I've been here.
So isn't it required to be inspected so often?
Yes, but it doesn't mean there's not, mechanical issues.
I'm not trying to downplay the need for accessibility and everything. I'm just telling you from a general workflow.
And we could simply put in a real elevator. That's an option.
Do the different departments in the different buildings track traffic that comes in by foot? And if not, we probably should ask them to. In the next 6 months, we should ask them that when somebody comes in, they should log yes, we got somebody come in, this is why they came in. They don't have to record their name or address or anything. Just, this is who came in and this is why they came in, and find out how much traffic that is. Because I'm coming from a point that I don't work in town hall, and I don't know how many people come in, and I don't know how many people this applies to, but I gotta believe that you're talking about technology, but we have 30% of our population is probably over 55 or 60.
Yeah, but-
And so they're not technology-driven people.
Yeah, I agree with
My
you.
parents are over that age and they do use.
Yeah, but not everyone is. And I mean, I would
I don't
just,
want to make age discrimination is what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah,
because they're old, therefore they don't use
It's not gonna fit
computers.
for everybody, but the generation chasing us, if you take their cell phone away from them, they're lost. So even though we're not as comfortable in using it ourselves, the generation chasing us, who are the ones who are going to be paying for all these buildings, are the ones who are going to be on the cell phones. They're not going to be coming up here.
It doesn't eliminate the need for office space for the staff that we have here. It's not like local government can operate out of their
Remotely.
house. So although you're maybe, traffic is reducing over time, which there's still a number of people that come to town hall. When I go downstairs, there's people, the town clerk's office or the assessors, or paying their taxes. And a lot of the time, people do come here instead of going to Ritter and vice versa. So that does still occur.
even I've done that. When I went to start my business, I came here first and I was sent across the street because they go to the building department and get approval from them before I could come here. So, and it was January 1st and it was freezing out.
I did the same.
There was a presentation by the sanitary department, I remember, and they just went to some new cloud solution where, I don't really know the functionality of it, but I was hoping to be able to talk to them and find out, all right, so what's that doing on traffic? I mean, what's the purpose of that? And did it make the lives of taxpayers easier? You know, and so that's the only thing I'm suggesting is, I think you gotta look more at what's really going on and what are the numbers and things, you know? How many people are coming in the front door, which, you know, I don't see that many when I come in, but maybe you do, but what are the metrics? What are the metrics that, if this was industry and you said, I'm gonna put this new building, they're gonna go, really? For what? How many people, blah, 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 and it wouldn't go anywhere without having the data.
It's an excellent point. Like, I used to come here for one reason a year to get my swim pass, and that just went online. I mean, other than for this role, but as a citizen, I came here once a year for a swim pass, and that's no longer in need of this building.
Yep. So I'm not saying you're on the wrong path. I'm just asking you to somehow consider this, you know, in this picture that you're trying to solve.
Yeah, I really, you know, I appreciate your feedback because I think it's important. I think that, you know, what government has done in the past is not necessarily what government's going to do in the future, and we have to prepare for that. You know, today, when I was here earlier today, speaking with Elaine, and something that's happening across the nation is that internet systems are being attacked in small governments constantly.
Yep.
And that way you hold them ransom, they pay you their $2 million, and then, you know, you get access to your systems back. Well, today email was down for a couple hours this morning. And I think, you know, we always have that potential. And I think, and I think that we have to, when it comes to government, I would just always want there to be not just the electronic process, but the fallback to the paper process. That government shouldn't stop if we are, you know, because we're over-reliant on technology.
Yeah. And we're actually required under public records law to have.
You know.
So I'm gonna try to wrangle us back into criteria. I don't know how we got
appreciate the
this far astray out of criteria. I mean, I think the criteria you talked about is, some people mentioned the criteria that everything be under the same roof.
Yeah, that was.
And then we kind of spun into all different things.
Well, he's brought up a technological need. Does the building, you know, meet technological needs, you know, technological needs of the government?
Just add right now to the conversation.
Sure, come on and sit at the table. You're the only other person who's not at the table.
I do this for a living for a $100 million Fortune 50 corporation. So as far as, it's not.
You have to introduce yourself again.
Oh, sorry, I'm Dave Tonkin, 72 Leominster Road, Lunenburg, almost at Lunenburg, Virginia. Sorry, I've only been here 3 years. It's not just the people that walk in. I agree with you 180%. And my office is in Columbia, Maryland now. I work from home constantly. But I still need that time working face-to-face with my colleagues and to work collaboratively. So I really think it's a great idea to have everybody co-located in one location. I think there's a lot of merit, however, to be efficient when you're working in those locations. You provide the tools to those people so they can work off-site, remotely connect. You know, you can sit at home and grab whatever the budget was for Jack for last week that he didn't spend, that you can spend on the building, or whatever that number is, right? So you should be able to access those things. But I think it's great to build that culture where you can actually work together. I haven't read all your 8 points, but just listened to like the first, I think, 7.
Yeah.
We answered all 7 for all of our buildings right off the bat.
No.
None of our buildings meet any of our needs. They all need to be repurposed. I don't know how anybody works out of this building. No disrespect, I know you love the town hall. But working in a professional environment with the type of resources and tools that are available to you now, and you're just scratching the surface.
Oh,
You really are.
Oh, absolutely.
You're talking about everything else.
I'm just trying to start a future conversation among these.
That's awesome. I think that this would be a lot more available if we, took a hard look at how to repurpose some of the buildings and kind of rejigger. What's the vision?
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so I think the criteria is a great start. I love that idea. I just really support this initiative going forward. So I'd love to see, I think there's a great merit to kind of collating all the town. I can't tell you how many times I've been in Ritter and should have been here and should have been here and was over at the Ritter
But
building.
those are the stories, and that's,
Yeah,
I
that's what it
understand
is.
George's desire for metrics, because I'm a metric person myself,
Yeah, and
but,
that's a good place to start.
but if you're gonna, you said you work for a Fortune 100, Fortune 50,
Yeah.
and you're in private industry as well. I work from home and I'm in private industry. The first and foremost thing is anybody who says, they equate government and business, starts out with a complete reversal of ideas. Because in business, you do things, how do I make more profit?
Yeah.
Well, government doesn't do that. So the reason why people work in buildings like this is because when you go to the taxpayer saying, oh, you know what, I love that Fortune 50 building that they have, but you have to pay for it, guess what? All of a sudden, working in this building looks a lot brighter to people, okay?
Yeah, and I get that 100%. So
Okay.
a lot of the companies that I've worked for in the past, and I heard the financial and cost analysis comparisons, right? So I always try to look at things from the position of what's the right answer, what serves the greatest need, and then we figure out how we're going to pay for it. Right, and I know that's different in public sector versus private sector, and it's a bigger challenge. And when I was talking with what was his name, Ron?
Mr. Dion?
Ron Dion.
Yeah, Ron Dion.
Very interesting gentleman, we had a long conversation in the hallway. My point was, and this is where I agree with you, I don't think the town has the stomach to pay the money to repurpose that building. I think it just costs too much money. With the amount of money that I spent on my little house over here on Leominster Road and some of the other renovations I've done, I love the building. It's very pretty, right? On the outside, the bricks are great. I just think that it would be enormously cost inefficient to try and renovate it into something else. It'd be a great idea. I think, as the people, the fiduciary responsibility to look after the taxes of all of us taxpayers, the town of Lunenburg, and all your other responsibilities for the town itself. And you have to look at that, engage it, and throw it out in front of everybody, and take the accolades, and take the arrows, one or the other. If there's always one side or the other on both of those. But my gut is I don't think it's really feasible to do that. I mean, when I threw out the Leominster example of them turning it into
The old high school?
I love that fact that they sold the whole place to the Newview community so that Leominster doesn't even own it anymore. So it's a little bit different, right? So the town just decided they'd rather not convey anything, but they're also saying we don't want to spend any money. Even if it's
Yeah,
entertaining.
right.
Now, if I remember though, I think the motion was actually to table that, not to shoot it down. So I don't think it was really shot down. I think it was just tabled for another meeting, but I could be wrong.
Anyway, that's not the discussion, that's not the discussion point again.
So the
I am trying my damnedest to keep this on topic, and people want to talk about government versus business and.
No, but it's an important part of
It is.
the citizen input is where everything gets lost because they're the legislative body of our government. And anything we do executively needs the legislative branch, and so here they are. And that's the piece of the puzzle that makes or breaks anything we work on. What comes to my mind, and I feel like I went down this path many, many months ago when we were talking about this topic, I think it was even our previous board, is as we talk about the inefficiencies of the buildings, the inefficiency of ADA compliance, the benefits of certain types of space, I start to look at the overall costs that are going to be done into a renovation, say at TCP, and I think that should stay school campus. That's bottom line for me. It will remain that way. It's being used by the schools right now. But that aside, I think we could be at a point, and this is where we get with these topics. The high school, the old building wasn't going to meet the needs, it's gone. The, TCP allegedly wasn't meeting the needs and couldn't be used, and so they built new primary. And so we might be at a point where we're so stuck in looking at this from the what building is going to be what, that maybe the future of Town Hall is a new building on the site of old primary. Maybe it could even look like old primary, but it might be cheaper and more efficient with technology and ADA compliance and having clean, safe working conditions to consider what is a possibility of a new town building.
We did do that as.
No, but I mean, bring it back into the fold here, because we get locked on talking about the old buildings and maybe.
No, that's your question too, right, for your next section. So once you set this criteria, what are those things for the second?
Yes,
What is
primary.
Objective to, I apologize.
But to finish what I was trying to say is we did look at that with the TAP A report, and tearing down the primary and putting a new building there was the most expensive option out of all 3 use options that we had. So.
There was a lot of flaws in the TAP A, but we don't need to go quoting it.
Well, I don't know how you're going to devalue the advice of professionals, but.
Well, for example, all the figures that got thrown around for a couple of years in regards to TC Passios building were figures estimating the cost of redoing one wing. And so when they would compare TCP's renovations to, say, the Ritter's renovations, it was the Ritter building versus a wing of TCP. And it was an apples to oranges. And I mean, that was from 2015. But when something might cost more to redo new, it still might be the better outcome. I'm working on a property now where it's gutted down to the studs because nothing there was worth keeping, and it probably would have been cheaper to just ignore that and, live with the pipes that were in the slab that shouldn't be there anymore. But sometimes, I think we're at the point where we talk about under one roof and it's assumed that's the TCP. If we're under one roof is the goal, then I would rather spend 15 million towards a new building than that old place.
Just go through the criteria and take it where it leads you. I think what is, to me, what's been consistent with the brief period I've been in the town is everything that's been thrown out there has been really kind of shot down. It's all been one color or another, right? So I applaud the effort to go through this process again, right? To come up with a solution that would be passable, whether it's incremental or one big Band-Aid, right? To come up with some solution for the housing of the staff of the town of Lunenburg, as well as the best use of the assets for the community and the staff. And we don't want to underplay the staff whatsoever. I mean, I don't know how you work in this building. I could. If my air conditioning at 72, I leave the office. If it goes above that, I'm just gone. I can't. Now, I don't need the elevator, thankfully, at least not yet. But I think it's important to go through the process and, get those criteria out there. Engage those groups. I'll be glad to volunteer for some. I made notes about the Eagle House thing, so I'll be there.
That'd be excellent. Because, one of the things that I've been doing and started doing a few weeks ago was touring town properties. And it was my first time going into both the basement and the attic of this building. And I'll tell you, I'm shocked this building is standing.
You should have seen the basement before they cleaned it out.
I'm shocked this building is standing. I mean, it is.
Plastic in there, or Jack will cut you?
Oh, yeah. Because the sewer backs up from the road into the basement of Town Hall. And so that's why there's plastic on the floor downstairs. But what I was getting at was that is that sometimes, like, as we have this conversation about safety, and one of the objectives is to have more meetings with members of the community, you know, nothing beats the visuals. Nothing beats walking into the basement of this building and seeing it leaning like this to give you the idea that this building is probably not one that should be used. Or seeing that there's 3 supports roughly in the middle of this floor, and there's nothing really back here. And that's it. I mean, and I think sometimes that kind of stuff says, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have, or going into the attic and seeing all the holes that you can see outside in, and how just this building is just too old for what we're trying to do with it.
Mr. Chair, if I may, first of all, a lot of people in Lunenburg live in houses that are
historic,
of these ages, and they're going to be okay. When we talk about some of these things, because I've been on this topic really heavily for 2.5 years. We have done walking tours of these buildings, community walking tours of these buildings. I've been on them, we've gone into them, we've gone out of them. Vertex studied this in terms of its structural integrity and et cetera, and it had a scale from 0 to 100%, 100% being complete failure, 0% being good condition, and 0 to 10 was considered basically their normal, 0 to 10%. And the town hall got a 12%. I know a lot of people were disappointed in that, but it actually fared the best out of the buildings they studied. And the building that was I don't remember the percentage, but TC Passios had $2 million of immediate needs that were considered complete failures or safety concerns, and we haven't addressed them, like the lead in the water. And so I get a little frustrated when we sit here and say that we're going to start having meetings and start getting input, because I've gone to every charrette, every meeting. I've gone to the Eagle House meetings. We did this gigantic meeting, I think this December 17th, 2017, at a collaborative room in the middle high school, where tons of people came and gave their input on the buildings. The land use director screenshotted all the brainstorming exercises that we did on the whiteboards. I went to a daytime meeting at the Eagle House where everybody got up and shared, and there was large groups of people, and we're not taking that data, which we've already collected. We've heard input and voices on this exact topic. We've done the walking tour. So to sit here and then suggest that we do these things when we have done them, we have the TAPE, we have the Vertex study, we've had additional architectural reports, and we act like we still are in the dark about all these things. What it really is a difference of opinion that's driving everybody's input here. And I think we've got to look for something like a new direction or a new idea that sort of sets us into a solution rather than down the same paths that just aren't getting us anywhere. But if we set up walking tours and all those things, I just want to acknowledge that those things have been done. And I mean, I made a point as a citizen before as a selectman not to miss a single thing. I went to it, I heard it, I listened, I ran, we keep talking about things. And then to say, let's get citizen input, let's have charrettes and meetings, let's go on a building walking tour. We have done that. And so now we need to say, okay, what do we do with that? Rather than just repeat what we've done, it's real spinning at its worst.
So, I'm going to, once again, try to put this back on the actual topic, which is defining criteria. If somebody doesn't want to discuss criteria, please let me know, because we can make this meeting a whole lot shorter. I want to just stick to that. I want to talk about the condition of the buildings, unless that's the criteria. That's a good criteria. All right? I don't want to talk about people working together or not working together. I want just snippets of what is the criteria, a bulleted list that you would like us to score things on.
Can I make a recommendation?
Sure, George.
I think it supports what you're trying to keep us in line with here. So, I sat in on some kind of a workshop here about a year ago, and it was with the open space people. They had stuffed questionnaires into the tax bills and mailed them out to everybody, and they basically tallied up the responses and everything. They presented those results in the meeting I was in, and the people in town were saying we value open space more than the buildings. And part of my frustration is, and there was a lot of people here that night, is that message went nowhere. And that was basically one of the reasons I left the board, because I didn't think that anybody wanted to hear what town residents were saying. What I would recommend in all of this is, and I thought that was a great idea that those folks did, is somehow come up with whatever your criteria is for all these buildings, mail them to the taxpayers and say, you guys are paying for it, what do you want to do? And I think that might help, it might help with the amount of time you guys are going to put into all this. And I'd hate to see it happen again where you're investing a lot of time and you're doing a lot of brainstorming, and then it goes to the town floor and they go, no.
Well, that's always going to happen.
Oh, it's always going to happen, but.
It always can happen. It always doesn't happen. It always can happen.
If there's, I mean, I know that they do these monkey Google.
Survey Monkey.
Which is a waste, because half the people don't have email.
You can also take it 10 times as one person.
I always thought it was a good idea that you put it in a tax bill and you mail it to them with
Yeah,
stamp
but
on it.
tax bills only go out once a quarter, so that makes it very limited to when we can. do
Twice
it.
a year.
Yeah, but
Twice a
I'm
year,
just saying
that's even worse.
that might help improve where you're trying to go if you get a real, because I walk around my neighborhood and like, I don't want to pay for a building. It's like, oh, you're gonna go and vote?
Okay, what I think would help in this regard,
Yeah.
tonight, at 9:30,
All right,
is if we stuck with the topic of what criteria people want to use when we're reevaluating the use, hold on a second, identify, define, and discuss, and finalize the criteria to be used in determining the use and/or reuse of the following buildings, and it's the 5 buildings. That's the list I wanted addressed.
Sorry, I went off topic.
That's okay. We've been off topic for 45 minutes.
With all due respect, I feel like we're on topic and we're heading in a better direction by listening to citizens' sort of perception of what we're doing. But
We had one person on our board give a list. We've had 2 additions to that list in an hour. I would probably think my assessment of that is probably different than your own. I don't think we're getting far. There must be things that people discuss when these ideas of options come up and how they weigh them in their mind and what gets weighed higher or valued higher than other things.
I think my problem for about 2.5 years is that we keep saying 5 buildings, because what drops off of this every time is the discussion of the Turkey Hill building, which is our most expensive critical need that we know is on our horizon. That determines a lot of capital building needs. It determines the needs of the school campus land. And so when we say 5 buildings, to go through this list with 5 buildings and leave off the most critical expenditure that's on our horizon, we're not being open-minded to the true needs of the town. The school population needs and the deterioration of the Turkey Hill. I think I've advocated for Turkey Hill to be added as a 6th building. People want to see Eagle House put on as a 7th. When we talk about the Boys and Girls Club potentially using TC Passios as part of a collaborative community space, that would leave the current Boys and Girls Club building empty. So I think we really, as we discuss the future of spaces, we really shouldn't be stuck on 5 buildings. We're shooting ourselves in the foot by doing that.
Well,
So let's change it to any building, the reuse of any building. There, now we don't have any number that we have to
And
worry
my
about.
intent
We still
isn't
have
to be
criteria.
argumentative, we were here talking to the police chief earlier about mistakes that were previously made, like the bad egress situation at New Primary was in full effect tonight at open houses, and the egress situation of the police department, there's only one entrance. And so why I'm saying we gotta look at the big picture here is the Turkey Hill School a couple years ago was given like 10 years left of its life before it needs a massive renovation.
No, that's not true at all. That's not true.
We don't have anything to do with schools.
We're Lunenburg.
We said we were gonna wait 10 years before we made a decision about the
I think the
future.
roof was given a 10-year, and I believe John Londa said before you redo the roof, because it's so expensive, you would want to designate whether or not you're actually going to keep the building.
So when they built the new school, the high school, they said, we're gonna wait 10 years before we ask you to make a decision about this building. The building's not gonna fall apart in 10 years. That's absolutely unequivocally false. It's just that we need to start thinking about it in a 10-year timeline. We're not even there yet. We're not even halfway there
And the
yet.
schools are currently overcrowding, in their current state. We have a lot of residential development projects on our horizon.
And we're going to have a meeting between
With all
the
due
department
respect,
heads.
I have 4 children in the school system. There's serious space needs in the school, and as we talk about buildings, especially because one of them's on school campus and was a school, I think it's only fair to look at the highly critical, because in town with these buildings, I break things down to say there's needs and there's wants. We want a better town hall. We may need a bigger school.
We're analyzing that.
If we overlap the two, then we have no, I think we have no purpose bringing a multi-million-dollar town hall project when we may be looking at a multi-million-dollar school need.
Three of these 5 buildings are former school buildings that we built new things for and didn't have a purpose for when we stopped their use. And now they're on our hands as the town to come with remedy for. And I hear what you're saying, Selectman Adams, and I don't disagree with your passion on this, but I think that our charge here is not to focus on the schools, because that's outside of our jurisdiction.
Don't use the word passion, because I'm using data and logic.
Well, we can't focus on Turkey Hill Middle
I
School.
find
It's
the
not
word
in front of us.
passion insulting. I'm
accept
talking
that.
about school population.
And when I hear from the superintendent, the school committee, or anyone else involved at that end that that's an issue, I'll believe it, but you keep saying it all the time, and you're the only one I hear say it. So when I hear from anyone involved with the management of the school,
Came in with the data one night and public commented about it. I'm not making up that there's space.
that was, again, that new houses are being built. I want to hear, and again, it's been scheduled, that's the superintendent, the school committee, and other chairs of the planning department and our board are going to sit down and talk about
Why do
that.
people get angry with me when I talk about
Because
school
you-
population growth and needs?
Because you keep saying it, and I heard you the first 10 times, and I want to hear from somebody who that's their day job, besides your feeling that is overcrowded.
Well, no, it's
I mean,
based on data
our
because
last meeting with the school committee, they said that. They said they weren't gonna do anything about Turkey Hill for 10 years, and there was like, maybe in 7 years, they would start thinking about it. I mean, we met with them and we asked
So
them
more than
that.
just the actual building, it's the population space needs. Like, we know the incoming kindergarten class last year triggered a 6th teacher, and they're about 5 students away from needing a 7th. It used to always be 5 teachers per class. We have data that the school needs are gonna be an
I'm not on the
important
school
piece of the
Can we direct this? I'm going to do this until 10 o'clock. Can we direct this to what is that criteria? The reason why we don't get anywhere, okay, not only this board, but places in general, is that we have the inability to focus on the task at hand, and until we do the task at hand, which leads to other things, we always want to fix the whole thing at the same time, all at once. And it just goes around and around. So I am asking yet again, if those present criteria that you can add to a list, when somebody comes to me with a project for any building, how do I judge it? That's what we want to focus on.
Did you put something in here about repurposing? Was the 9th one?
The 9th one was future use potential, yes.
Future use potential, okay.
Yeah.
So I've actually boiled down what Mr.
Okay.
Jeffries put into just simpler, more bulleted terms. It's just a rewording.
Yep.
So building safety, that's one. Meets current needs of the community. Number 2, addresses defined future needs of the town. Obviously, the defined future needs of the town is a point in time. You can't define things that you haven't defined. You can't identify future needs beyond when you've done them. So if we do future needs today, they're going to be different than future needs 2 years from now. It has to have adequate parking, full ADA compliance, centralization of resources, number 6, expansion potential, number 7, importance of the real estate ownership, number 8, financial implications, added value, proposed added value to the community, current structural integrity. Does anybody object to any of those so far?
No.
Okay. Is there any additional ones?
No. Thank you.
No, I mean, just that, kind of goes without saying, but any proposed use goes with the zoning and the intent of the village bylaw and APDC.
Okay, so.
Meet zoning
Meet
criteria.
zoning, right.
For that with ADA, so zoning, regulatory, ADA, all applicable regulations and statutes.
Well, they're different. I mean, zoning is a town thing, and ADA is a state thing.
Federal.
Federal.
Yeah.
AAB is the state.
Would we want to assess the Eagle House and the Boys and Girls Club building as well, since they're part of the municipal collection of buildings?
Well, again, I don't think this is looking to proactively assess every building that we're using. We're trying to figure out, how do we judge things that projects coming forward? So nobody's looking, while I understand your point, I mean, nobody's suggesting that the Eagle House is moving anywhere. We're going to be reused for anything anytime soon. So I think putting this against other existing buildings is something we need to do as we go along anyway. But I just wanted to know, for projects that we talked about, especially what our second objective is, which is the primary, like, these are the things we would judge this on.
Does energy efficiency fall into any of these?
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Maybe to piggyback that to operational costs.
I'll put a slash there. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
We should
energy
be striving
efficiency,
for carbon
operational
neutrality.
costs.
There should be no reason why you couldn't apply the same set of criteria to any building.
Right,
Right, but what
that's
I'm
the
saying-
idea.
Yes, no, I agree with you. I agree with you. But we're not looking for projects that we don't, you know, we're not looking to add projects. It's hard to understand.
On your list.
Public safety.
I find it interrelated because of the fact that people like the Boys and Girls Club have expressed interest in being part of the TCP if that were to become a large community town hall space, therefore another building's vacated. So I think it's only logical to include it in the big picture discussion as potential future uses of a space that could be vacated by the decisions made in another space.
Okay, so let's
It's
put
all
that in.
connected.
Put that, well, I mean, sure.
And the Eagle House was originally discussed, you know, back in the pre-TAP days. It was discussed and they decided they wanted to keep it as is. And I mean, you could apply that mentality to any building and be like, well, yeah, land use just wants to stay. So let's just take the Ritter out. So just because a group decided they're going to continue their current use doesn't mean we shouldn't discuss the building as a piece of our municipal puzzle.
Right, but this objective is not discussing the buildings, it's discussing the criteria used to judge. And again, just to make it clear to you, I have no problem rewording it, striking out all the buildings, and just saying for any building.
I think that's what I'm trying to say.
I mean, these were approved goals already, so, I mean, in this case, the buildings are ones we're using examples of, because those are the ones for the last 3 years we've been talking about. But it really applies to anything.
Thank you for this opportunity, but I'm in trouble, I have to go home.
Thanks for
It was
stopping
nice
by.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys. And,
Thanks for your input.
I will see you guys at that little community.
That little thing.
I have somebody referring to that as the Selectmen's Ball.
Oh, is that the
The 19th.
appreciation?
He said I got an
Appreciation,
invitation
yeah,
to
the
the
19th.
Selectmen's
Okay.
Ball.
I didn't hear what date he was talking about.
That's funny.
I think it's what he's talking about.
Guess we should get horse-drawn carriages to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super nicely, man.
It's the black tie event, right?
Yeah. Anybody have anything additional to these? Because we can, I can type up this list.
Thank you.
We can submit it for next week and then release it to the general public for their input on the website or something.
Yeah, could we even maybe end up formatting it into some type of Excel spreadsheet and we can have like this master grid of thoughts on buildings?
Well, again, I just wanted to define the criteria. We can define what to do with it and how we're gonna look at it, how we'll use it. Obviously, there'll be a grid as people come up with different proposals. Then we'll match them against these and say, okay, how does everybody on this board do their own scorecard about how they feel about all these things?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be one way to at least get the conversation started. And then look at other people's criteria, which would be important.
Yeah, I think that the list that we have, I know that, I try to contribute the opening shot here, but I think that the conversation, even though we did get a little to the left and to the right, I think that we had a holistic discussion on what this could be, what it really means. I think we all have been able to vocalize our input here, and I think that what we have that you just read out to us is a good start.
I agree.
like the questions, thank you.
Okay, so I will write this up for next week, just a list, bulleted list. They're just gonna be in this order. At some point, we probably should.
Prioritize?
Yeah, well, I don't even know if it's necessary to prioritize, because I think every one of us, if we gave this list of 10 things to all of us, it would be prioritized differently, and I don't think we'd come with a consensus.
Yeah.
And I think,
We know that these are the criteria that we're gonna judge it on, and we can present that, but this is how we, as individuals, evaluated it, how we came to this. It'll give us a starting point to come up to a better consensus to what to bring forward.
right, and I would add, further emphasize, I don't think it should be a prioritized ranking because, at least not blanketed anyway, because for each individual building or each proposed use, I would think certain things are more important than others.
Right.
Did we end up adding cost?
Yeah,
Analysis.
financial implications.
Okay.
That was the euphemism for cost.
Yeah, for Mr. Rogers, he would be very upset if we didn't include cost.
Yeah, I was amazed that Mr. Jeffries didn't have that in his list. That would be, having served in town for many years, I thought that was like the first thing people ask you about. They don't want to know what the project looks like or what it does. How much does it cost?
Well, we know it's not gonna happen if we can't get that right.
Well, I mean, again, you just have to, that'll be the yardstick that a lot of people at town meeting vote on. It's like, everything below cost will be what they judge the cost against, so.
Right.
And again, this town has shown a wide range of things that they support and don't support. It's not like there's a blanket rule, like they voted for a beautiful school and public safety building, et cetera, and other things they've turned down. So, I mean, they want people to make a case. All right. Before I even entertain the next part, which we may not want to at 9:45, but I did want to say that we talked about, the FinCom had reached out about having a symposium at the auditorium about a lot of the things that were discussed earlier today, about potential increased school population, budget concerns, building concerns, and everything. I brought that to this board. The board was in favor of it. I commented that back. The FinCom chair said that working with the dates, the auditorium is free, and the dates Heather, Adam, and Kate are available. Heather, town manager, Adam, the land use director, and Kate, the superintendent. I'm proposing the date of October 29th for the symposium. That is the only night that's available in the auditorium in October. I guess aside from a Friday, which they're probably not going to.
What weekday is that?
Tuesday.
It's a Tuesday night.
Tuesday, we don't normally have a meeting that month.
So that's
Right.
convenient.
So that would be the last. So, I don't know, does anybody know, can they look at their schedules? Is that available for everybody?
It's good for me.
Do you know?
I'm assuming it's okay.
Okay.
I feel like it would work.
Yeah, I think so.
Damon?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I will respond back to the FinCom chair and CC to the school committee chair that is fine. with
And it'll
us.
probably be about 7, right, as usual?
Yeah, maybe 6:30 or something, yeah.
Do we have a new date yet for storm resiliency?
What do you mean, the follow-up on the public hearing?
Yes.
Do we?
For the
Unitil's?
selectmen's,
For the
Yeah.
walk?
for the walk, the 17th, the planning board didn't have a quorum last night, so they were supposed to discuss it at last night's meeting.
Okay. No, I don't mean for the walk, I mean for the
They didn't have a
discussion.
forum last night?
No.
Oh, boy.
I mean for the discussion with Unitil,
So they're still holding their public hearing on the 23rd?
that Monday? Okay.
Yes. And the selectmen can make a decision on the 1st, October 1st.
Okay.
But we still want to do the walk, and so that's the,
Right, that's the date up in the air. So
well,
the September 17th at 5:30, that's what's being proposed, but planning board hasn't responded as far as if they're available that evening as well.
What was the
'Cause they haven't
proposed date again?
17th.
So, well, the
Fine.
17th is a week from today. So they have to make a decision. I mean, and we need a decision.
Well, they won't theoretically potentially have a meeting before then.
Yeah, they're not gonna, I mean, what are they gonna do? Wait for Monday to tell us what they can do Tuesday?
Well, they won't have a meeting
So
this
can
Monday.
we decide, can we have is Unitil available? Have they said they're available?
That was the date they were available. I'll have to check with the land use director if 5:30 was still going to work. Remember,
And
they
planning
had
board,
a
went
cap
on
at
a walk,
6.
so we're the ones who could really use it.
Right, I mean, I don't think none of us should go on the walk because planning board didn't have a quorum. I mean, I think we should have somebody, they can go on the walk
And they had one.
And they can email about dates.
and they can post it, and if they can't make it, so if they don't have a quorum, then it was posted for no reason, so fine.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
it Seems to me we should have it.
Sounds good. And so we said 5:30 on the 17th?
Yes.
All right. Do we have any planned executive?
Just meet here?
Anything next week?
I would assume we'd probably meet in the Ritter parking lot. It's
Yeah, I
closer.
would say,
Okay.
consider, well, yeah,
Ritter?
the meeting for, right, because that's where the walk will be used.
Do we have anything executive scheduled for next week?
Do we have any executive
No.
session? I don't think so. All right, so I'm going to leave this up to the board, whether or not you want to at this hour.
I think we should
Start
set-
addressing objective 2.
I'm
I think we should
tapping
table
out.
it.
Yeah, I think we should table it.
All right. So that's going to be, I'm going to bring this list to next week's meeting.
Can you send it ahead if you have a chance?
Yeah, we discussed it here, so it's just a formalization. Sure, I can send the document.
Thank you.
Just don't respond to it.
I won't.
And then we'll circulate it, we'll leave action 2, so we'll say this is action 1, and we'll save action 2 until we get this circulated among town, and hopefully by the end of October, we can finalize this report.
Great.
And then the next workshop, which will be, which
Second meeting in October,
is,
which is, I think, the 8th.
hold on a second, maybe I should just.
Yeah,
So-
'cause- yeah,
Yes, the 8th. So the 8th, that objective 2, that should be the workshop.
So
For next week's meeting, please have read the the Natick public comment that I sent out last week. And also the Easton social media, so be prepared to discuss those. I don't want to go into reading it, I want to go into just discussing it, compared to our own, and go through topics about things that people may want to adopt from that or not adopt from that, and what they think is working or not working in our current one.
great.
All right, so we're down to, next week we have our meeting, September 17th at 7 right here. Any public comment from the public? Final public comment from the board?
I think mine's just a question, in terms of the Unitil walk. We open that up to the public, like, should we advertise for people to join, like residents, or we had some really good public commenters at the planning board meeting who are highly interested, if we want to advertise it. I mean, it will be.
it will be a posted meeting.
Correct. I didn't know if we wanted to do any
therefore it's
outreach, like on the Facebook page or an email to invite people to tour.
I would say that's probably not, given the time limitations,
Right.
if they want to attend the meeting, but I don't think there's going to be opportunity
To engage
to
the public.
engage the public at this meeting.
Because we have an hour and a half to do the whole walk and get back here for our meeting.
I mean, just invite them to walk.
We did it at the
I
last
don't-
meeting.
I mean,
We
it's
said at the
fine with
last
me to
meeting.
invite them. It's an open meeting.
But we didn't
so
know what
they
it
can
was until
attend.
just now, so I just was
Well,
wondering. if you wanted-
we announced it last week too, so, but we can, yeah, they can walk as long as they understand it. We are not entertaining any public questions. Because I don't know that we're going to have time for our questions. Any other public comment from the board? All right, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good night, everyone. We will see you next Tuesday night.